I want to talk about mindset. I want to talk about the current state of multifamily. Take us back from the beginning, Tyler. Like maybe even talk about your first real estate deal, because I know you didn't just wake up one day and have $400 million and a huge team.
You know, my life was very unbalanced with that, like very, very unbalanced. Really, things took off for me right around 2014, 15. That's when I found out I was going to become a dad. I knew the type of husband and dad that I wanted to be. And I was not that person at that moment. So I went on the search for a different avenue, a different solution. And I made enough. This may seem trivial for somebody, but I'm going to tell you the identity shift for me was a big deal. I bought a brand new truck and I'm so grateful. I dove in head first and there's been so many challenges.
Because a lot of people go through these adversities and it's like they have this kind of victim mentality. It's like, oh, this, why does this always happen to me? But this is where the mindset starts to come in, right? This is like whatever happened, but how you react to what happens and how you grow from that is really, you want to get out of it.
If I overcome this experience or if I approach this experience in the right way, it's going to give me.
Welcome everyone to this. I'm really looking forward to this episode with my good buddy Tyler Deveraux, one of our platinum clients. Actually, we don't talk too much about our platinum stuff, but he's one of our few elite platinum clients. So super excited to dive into mindset, real estate, and stuff like that. So let's get to it. Tyler Deveraux, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mauricio. Excited to be here. Excited to see y'all on here as well. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be on here for sure. So I'm excited for some questions.
100%. And as you guys know, I've got a bunch of questions that I have that, selfishly I've prepared, especially on my topic mindset, but obviously this is all about what you guys, so if you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. For those of you who don't know Tyler, he's known as he's a keynote speaker. He runs a huge event called Peak Partnership out in Orlando. It's about 650, 700 people every year. Best-selling author, $400 million in assets under management, 3,700 apartments, 6 different states, a couple podcasts. I mean, he's pretty much everywhere and scaled the whole thing. And I definitely want to talk it offline with Tyler. I want to talk about mindset. I want to talk about the current state of multifamily, how he scaled his business. But before that, let's just kind of get to how this actually all got started. Like, let's take us back from the beginning, Tyler. Like, how did you get started? Maybe we can talk about your first real estate deal, because I know you didn't just wake up one day and have $400 million and a huge team under management.
No, it's been a process for sure. So I did my first, my first real estate deal when I was 21. Bought a property that, I thought that I was just going to live in and, that's it. But I lost my job like right before I got laid off, right before I was supposed to close. It was back in the day when, you just needed a pulse to get approved for a loan. And so I decided, I was like, dude, I'm still going to buy this thing. I'm going to have my buddies move into it. Maybe they can pay me some rent. And that's when I saw the power, man. I never thought, never back then, I think I'd be a real estate investor. Like it was never on my realm of, I don't even know if I knew any like real estate investors, it was before reality TV shows and all that kind of stuff. So I never even on my realm, but I saw the power of it. I saw the power of having people living there, paying me rent, having extra to do things with. And that was, I was living there for free plus extra. I just saw the power. And so I started, I would make a little money and buy some more. But I had no idea what I was doing at all. So like then 08, 09, when that happened, I got hurt in 08, 09. I got some scars from 08, 09. But it's the best thing though. I literally look at that as it was one of the best things that could happen at that time because it woke me up. And that's what I think that's so beautiful about challenges is they wake you up. You can just get caught in this like, I don't know, just comfortable rhythm, but challenges will wake you up. And I understood the power of real estate, but I also understood power, both, negatively and positively, it goes both ways. And so that's when I started diving into my training. I started getting trained on how to actually buy and started flipping some properties and wholesaling some deals. But my bread and butter, honestly, was not real estate. That's not what was making me the money to buy the properties. What was making me the money was, even though I was flipping and all those kind of things, it was social media, internet marketing. That's what I did. But my life was very unbalanced with that, like very, very unbalanced. And then like really things took off for me when right around 2014, 15, that's when I found out I was going to become a dad. And it's the only thing that I ever knew I wanted to be. But listen, I knew the type of dad I wanted to be. I didn't know the type of business owner I wanted to be in, or if I even wanted to be one. I didn't think I wanted to be one. I didn't know what I want, but I knew the type of husband and dad that I wanted to be. Is very, and I was not that person at that moment. And so as excited as I was, and also I was so nervous, I was so terrified, so terrified. And so I went on the search for a different avenue, a different solution, and found apartment buildings. And I'm so grateful. I dove in head first, and there's been so many challenges. There's still challenges, like those don't just go away. Like you've seen a bunch of them, Mauricio, along our journey for sure, and still see these challenges. But man, I'm so grateful for real estate and what it's done for my family, but also what it's done for me as a person. Like it's changed me as a person and my identity as a person, and it has helped me grow in so many areas that I never thought possible. Not just financially, like in so many areas that I never thought. So
yeah, and there's so much to unpack. I hope you guys picked up on something. I'm gonna kind of drill down there a little bit. You said that 08, 09, you got really wiped out, really challenging times. And then you said, hey, this is probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I tell a similar story in my end. Like I almost died, almost lost the business, really went down to zero. And now as I look back on it, I think, hey, this is the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I was literally like septic and, I had a 30% chance of death. Looking back on it, I think it's one of the best things that ever happened because it made me grow. How did that experience in 08 or 09? I mean, tell me a little bit about how that mindset why do you say that's the best thing that ever happened to you?
It embarrassed me is what it did. I was very embarrassed. I had a truck. So I drove this $400 Ford Festiva. I don't know if you guys know what a Ford Festiva is, but it's a shitty car is what it is, especially a $400 one. Okay. Bright yellow. But that's what I drove. And I drove that for the longest time. And let me tell you, trying to pick up chicks in a $400 Ford Festiva is not easy. Okay. Especially with this mug. It just ain't easy. But I made enough. I had made enough that I bought a new, and this may seem trivial for somebody, but I'm going to tell you the identity shift for me was a big deal. I bought a brand new truck, a Nissan Titan. I'll never forget it. 2007, whatever, Nissan Titan. And I was so pumped about it, man. But then once again, 08, 09 happens. And when I say it embarrassed me, it literally embarrassed me because I had to, I ended up having to sell that truck. And this is right around the same time I got married in 2010. And so I'm going through a lot of these challenges at this time. And I remember moving to DC with Britt, my wife, and having to sell that truck and just feeling like the biggest loser, and just wondering how I'm going to provide for her. And even though I knew that I was a provider, even though I knew like I will grind, like I knew that, it humbled me is what it did, and it embarrassed me. But and your question wasn't that. Your question was how did it? How was it a blessing or something like that?
Yeah.
I just believe it's because tough times like that, they don't make you. What they do is they reveal you, right? That they push you to where you need to be. But I just believe most people that don't allow themselves to get pushed there, experience is everything. Like I look at any experience as something that if I overcome this experience or if I approach this experience in the right way, it's going to give me confidence and increase my faith. That's what I look at it as. So you have to have faith to obviously go into any experience like that, but it's something that I've trained myself to do. And I believe there's pivotal moments in my life that have made me think in that way. But this was one of those moments for sure. That's why it's a blessing.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people go through these adversities, whether it's the financial thing or whether it's, what happened to me or whatever. And it's like they have this sort of, they have this kind of victim mentality. It's like, oh, this, why does this always happen to me? Of course it happened to me. Like this is why I can't be successful because I had this issue in 08 or 09. But this is where the mindset starts to come in, right? This is like, hey, whatever happened, but how you react to what happens and how you grow from that is really what you want to get out of it. And it sounds like that's what happened to you as well, where you really, first you're embarrassed, but then you really grew from that experience and made you a better person, which is ultimately, I think, what we're all trying to accomplish.
And I want to just, it certainly didn't happen overnight. That's for sure. Like meaning that perspective, like I wallowed in that for a little bit. And what I would tell anybody out here is you never know how what you say is going to impact somebody else. And I say that because I had lost like this big client that I had been working with. And it was like that was a blow. And this is when we're already out in DC. And I remember that was just a blow, you know? And I remember Brittany talking to her dad about it. And I remember him overhearing him say on the phone, because I'm terrified of what he's going to say, but what he said in that moment, he said, something along the lines of like, oh, Tyler is like a pro athlete. He'll figure it out. No. And there's no world where he should like say that, but he said that because, well, maybe he viewed me in that light. I really don't know, but I think he felt that his responsibility to just like remind us as like a father figure, like, no, things happen. You're going to be okay. That's all I needed to hear though. Like, that's literally all I needed to hear in that moment. And you never know. You just never know how what you say about people, whether you think they're listening or not, will actually impact them.
Love that. So, and you talked about how you being a father was such a pivotal moment to you. And you said something that's interesting too there, that you'd always knew, or you had a vision. Basically, what I heard is like you had a vision of being like the top father, top husband. I know you talk a lot about visualization, so I want to go there next. Like, first, maybe explain, what is visualization and how that really has helped you. Because I do it all the time. So it's a big thing for me, but that's a good example where you just used it about like, hey, you had a vision of being I talk about like top 1% father, top 1% husband. You had a vision of that. So talk about, how you use that and why it's become so important for you.
I didn't even realize I was doing it in the beginning when it comes to this route, like a dad and a husband. But it was easy for me to visualize it, not because I necessarily knew what that looked like specifically, but because I knew what it didn't look like. And, my dad is a great person. I love him. He is literally a great person, but he made some mistakes. And I used to look at that, once again, I used to look at that as a detriment. I'm grateful for it. I really am. But I would visualize, like, I'm big. I visualize at certain times, but at this point in my life, what I was doing is I was visualizing, like, well, in my head when I was like going to sleep or these areas, like that's what I visualize. I'd visualize being at every single game. I'd visualize being, romantic with my wife and leaving her little notes. And so I would always like make sure to make that a priority. And I still try to make that a priority, obviously. But those are the types of things, the things that I knew that my mom would have loved, or the things that I ingrained in that I knew that I needed to be, that I know I needed to do, right? And it's the same as being a dad. It was so easy for me to visualize these things because I knew the things that created pain as a kid. And I also saw the pain that my dad lived with, like the regret my dad lived with. I saw it. I never wanted that. And so that stuff was easy. The harder thing for me, if I'm being real, was to visualize really truly what I wanted. I felt for the longest time I was running from what I didn't want instead of truly pursuing what I did want. And the reason that was harder is because, well, I didn't even know I had never experienced it. See, like things that you hate, things that you despise, things that you've experienced in a negative way, you've experienced it. It's very easy for you to like feel that emotion. I don't know what it feels like to do the things that I wanted to do. So I had to make it up. And ultimately what drove me to do that was, I lived with lots of fear. I really did live with lots of fear. And so what I would do is I would go to bed and I was struggling sleeping. And so I would go to bed with audiobooks. I'd put headphones in and I would listen to audiobooks that fell asleep. And one of my go-tos was really anything Napoleon Hill. I loved everything with Napoleon Hill. And what I realized of how powerful that was is a lot of times I'm listening as I'm trying to fall asleep, but it took me to a state where I wasn't necessarily even listening. Something had sparked something that was a thought, and then I was starting to visualize. And this is really all happening at the same time that I was getting into the multifamily space. So I visualized, like, not even knowing how powerful it was or what I was doing, but I was like, man, I had only told the story up to where I was. Like, I am here because of all this stuff that happened to me. But now all of a sudden I'm like, man, I did this deal, and then I did this deal, and then I did this deal. These are deals that I had not done. These are deals that I'm just like dreaming about doing. And so my first form of visualization came from just merely dreaming and allowing myself to dream. And to just even think about that, like, how powerful is that? And I believe, Mauricio, that happened because I enhanced my circle of people that were pursuing big things, man. And maybe be like, okay, shit, maybe I can do some things. So you started dreaming, bro.
Do you still visualize in your head, or do you have like vision boards, or do you get a magazine, cut stuff out, or do you go on Pinterest? Like, do you want to talk a little bit about your process, if you ever, is it all in your head?
No, all the above. I do all those things. And one of the things that I do is I'll like write out my goals. I like to write. It's like a form of therapy for me. So I'll write out my goals in detail, and I'll tell a story. But I'll tell a story in the like 10 years from now, but like that I'm already 10 years from now. And so that's powerful because I'll think, okay, where am I going to be in 10 years from now? Okay, well, I'm about to turn 40, which means I'm about to turn 50. And Pax is 9, which means he'll be 19. Marley's 7, she'll be 17. And I start to be like, okay, what do I want life to look like at that? What do I want to be doing? Where do I want to be living? How do I want to be living? And then I'll just backtrack it. And what I do is I tell a story. And I literally will tell the story of how I got there. Like I could pull up and I could show you the story. Like when I started the multifamily mindset, the story that I told of that, of things that I wanted to happen that hadn't happened, but I was talking about them as they already had happened. That's how I visualize. That's my process.
That's awesome. That's great. That's gold. I mean, guys, if you guys have questions about mindset, please drop in the track. I mean, this is gold because I usually have the visualization where same thing. I put myself 10 years from now or 5 years from now, and I'm literally, how old are my kids? How old are my dogs? And I have like a scene in the movie, like I describe the scenes, like, oh, I'm getting it's 5 a.m. I got my coffee, I got my kids, whatever. But I haven't done the story thing. And I think that's so powerful because it's like, I think I'm missing a step there. I've got the visualization part and I've got the scene, and, I make it as vivid as possible with different angles. And I try and be in the moment. So I'm not saying, where am I going to be in 10 years? I'm actually there right now. I'm there. I'm sitting there in the fireplace, whatever.
Yes.
But then the story, like, it's almost like maybe I should be telling my kids, how we got here, so that's amazing. That's really good stuff.
But so is yours, bro. I love that you, like you said, I just woke up, I grabbed my coffee, like you create, because it's easier to tie emotion to that, I love that so much. And it was, once again, it's so easy for us. And people tell me that they're not, they don't, it's hard for them to visualize, but it's not. You visualize fears all the time, and you visualize them in such great, distinct, vivid detail. And so do I. And I know that. That's how come I know that. And so when you just train yourself and force yourself to do it the other way, I do it a couple ways, man. I will bring like whatever this thing is, right? And I will bring it close to me. Because when I'm visualizing my fears, I feel like it's like right here. And so when I find myself and I catch myself in that situation, I literally, like, I know this sounds cheesy, bro, but I mean, I know you can relate to this. Like, I will take this and I will literally, what I used to do was throw it behind me. Like, I would visualize taking whatever this shit is and I would throw it behind me. But what I realized over time is that didn't necessarily work, because I felt like then I was running from it and it was about to catch my ass. So what I would do is I would literally bury it. Like, I visualize whatever this fear was that I had, I would bury it. But then I would instead replace it, because you have to replace it. You can't just remove something without replacing it. Mm-hmm. This is another thing that I learned. If I'm going to remove a fear, I have to replace it with something that I want. And so, the fear occupies empty spaces within our mind. And so I need to occupy the spaces in my mind with the things that I desire instead of the things that I fear. And so I would place whatever that thing is, and I would move it here, forward, bring it close to the side, visualizing it going. I mean, I know that sounds cheesy and weird, but I want to see it in the best detail that I possibly can. And it's powerful.
It's work. It works. It's powerful. I'm sure you follow Ed Milet, but Ed talks about.
That's where I learned that from, bro.
So Ed Milet talks about visualization, and it's so vivid because most people like visualize it kind of vaguely. And Ed talks about making sure, hey, is your visualization in black and white, or is it in color? Are you in first person? Or are you looking from above? Are you looking from the left? Are you looking from right? Like, what's the angle? What does it smell like? Like, what does your environment smell like? Just trying to get so crystal clear, like as if you're sitting there in the moment in whatever time place you want to have. So if you guys aren't following Ed, I would highly suggest it. So how did you use that, Tyler, to sort of scale from where you were when you started, kind of house hacking, getting your first real estate deal, living there, buying another one, growing, losing it all? How did you use visualization and sort of this mindset to get to where you are, to get to today, where the scaling happened? Was that part of it?
Yeah, 110%. And this is where I say that I just believe that people want X's and O's, and it's like, this is the X's and O's for me, though. I remember sitting in this class, Dave Lindahl was teaching it. Love Dave. And I remember hearing Dave tell a story And me thinking to myself, well, I love telling stories. I do. It's like something that I like, tell my kids stories every night. But I remember like thinking to myself, like, man, I'm having an amazing story. Like, I'm gonna have an amazing story. And so what I started to do is I say I'm laying in bed, I'm visualizing. I'm literally visualizing. I said I did this deal and I did that deal and I did this deal. I'm like telling the story, right? But here's the thing: the first deal that I said that I did in that story, this is all fictional. Nothing's happened. Literally, I haven't done shit yet. But it was a 20-unit deal. That's what it was. And what's crazy is then a 20-unit deal in Birmingham, Alabama gets sent my way. And I believe that this is the reason it was so powerful is because I had been selling myself on this story, dude, every night. And then all of a sudden I get sent this 20-unit deal and it was like, oh my hell. I just manifested this shit. Like, oh my gosh. It's like I was so convinced that this was the deal that I had manifested. And listen, there was nothing sexy about that deal. This was not some crazy home run deal. But you know what? I'm not emotional about any deal except that deal, because that deal, even though it was my least profitable deal, I believe led me to every other deal that I did past that. And so, but the reason it was is because I was selling myself. I had been selling myself so much and so hard on this journey that and I had visualized it in that way that when I saw something that resembled it, I went freaking all in. I wasn't nervous of like, is this the one? Should I? It was like, of course this is the one. Like, this is the one that I've been visualizing for freaking 5 months. Like, of course this is the one, you know?
How do you, this is going to help really a lot of folks who are going to be listening to this, who are listening here, since it's specific to raising capital and really getting investors, which is one of the challenges most people are having now. How do you use visualization to raise capital? And how do you find investors with that visualization process? I mean, how do you incorporate that into, because that's one of the biggest challenges of real estate syndicators. Yeah, they got to go find the good deals, get the team together, but you also got to find investors. And that's a question I get all the time is, where do I get these investors from? How do I do it? You know, nobody wants to invest or whatever. How do you go about through that process?
I love it. This is a phenomenal question. So I have a sales framework that is, S stands for switch seats. And so switch seats, and then A is assess the need. But in order for me to do that, I have this 12-minute song, okay? It's a song by M83. This is the same song that I've listened to for years, but it just is like, it's almost like a trigger for me now. So it's a 12-minute song by M83. It's called Midnight Souls Remain. It's all instrumentals. And I'll plug in my noise-canceling headphones, and I literally want to switch seats with my investor. So before I worry about where to find this person, I'm literally like, I want to know who this person is. So like, who are they? What are they worried about? What keeps them up at night? Right. Like, and I'm like, when I say dial in an avatar, I literally mean dial in an avatar, like a name. And I do demographics, but mostly psychographics. Like, and psychographics is just things that we care about, things that we are, deem important, things that, we value, those kind of things. Like, who is that person? And then once I can literally see that person. This is why like I love these questions so much, Mauricio, because this is literally the X's and the O's to me, because it's not vague anymore. Like I'll literally write up, well, who this person is. We like a name, I give them a name. And so anytime that I'm recording a content video, or anytime I'm about to go on a one-to-many anything, I'm visualizing that person and what would that person's concerns be, what would that person's worries be, and then I'm speaking to those. Like, so I'm switching seats, right? I'm talking to that person. That also helps me identify where that person would hang out. Like, it's, once again, I love stories. I'm big on storytelling, so I tell a story of who this person is, where they would be, what their concerns are, what they need, and then my job is to help them go get it. So
that's freaking awesome. I'm also big on habits and routines, and I'm sure you've got some as well. You want to talk about some of your your habits that you do on a daily basis that kind of get you into this mind frame?
Yeah. I mean, working out is a big one. Like I love to wake up early. I don't believe though that it's the time you wake up. I believe it's how much purpose you have when you wake up. Like, my first really 30 to 45 minutes is like autopilot, but it's autopilot I'd say 30 minutes autopilot to get me going. Like, I jump up out of bed, first thing that I say, and anytime any of these little things, like anytime my life is in disarray, I can track it back to one of these little things. I'm just telling you, like I can. The first thing is, there's a lot of shit going on. There's lots of, I'm busy. It's so easy a lot of times to roll over and just be like, oh, shit, man, I got a lot to do today. And I found myself doing that. And so the first thing that I do, I learned this from a book, Tiny Habits. It's a great book, by the way, but he calls it the Maui effect. And I live out in Maui. And so I'm like, I'm doing this, man. And so the first thing that I do is I stand up, I go, today's going to be an amazing day. Today's going to be an amazing day. And then I usually like go in, use the restroom, and I just repeat that in my head, like, man, today's going to be an amazing day. Then I wash my face, brush my teeth. Now I'm awake. That helps. Then I say a prayer of gratitude, all gratitude. I'm about to ask for a lot, but I believe that we have to be grateful for what we have before we are worthy for more. And so a prayer of gratitude, and then I show love somewhere else. So pray for somebody else, or I'll send a voice note to somebody else, or send them a text, something for somebody else. So nothing about me. It's all gratitude and about showing love somewhere else. And then I use the daily journal. And my daily journal is more about like identifying some gratitudes, but then the three most important things for me to do that day. Like come hell. And most of the time, by the way, I've identified those the night before. So that I'm not groggy trying to think or think through that. I've done that before I've left the office. And then I read for 30 minutes. And I'm doing this literally just kind of autopilot. And one of the things for me to do that is make sure my journal is set out, open, pens out, like these little triggers that I have. And then I do one of two things every day. I either go surf or I go work out. And right now I'm in Orlando, and I've been in Orlando since January. We'll be here until August or so. And so nowhere to really surf in Orlando, so it's gym. I go to the gym. But my system is simple, though. Like my system is simple. Before I get out of the truck, I just read my goals out loud. My goals that I'm working on at that time. That could be the daily goals. That could be my yearly goal. That could be my quarterly goal. But I read my goals. Whatever I feel like I need to bring to the forefront, I read them out loud. That's my system. Then I go and I work out. When I get back in the truck, I say my affirmations out loud. So that's my trigger. Once again, before I get out, goals. When I get back in, before I pull off, affirmations. And then that's how I start my day. And the first thing that I do when I get to the office is I meditate for at least 10 minutes. I've worked out from that. Most of the time it's 15 minutes. Before anybody else gets in here, I meditate. And that's been a big deal for me too, because my mind's always racing. There's always stuff to do. I'm very much a high performer. I hold myself to a high standard, but sometimes I just need to clear my mind. And that's the time that I feel closest to God, is through meditation. So.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I know, you mentioned triggers. I mean, I think those are so critical. I do the same thing with goals. I have all my goals written out in my note iPhone or whatever. And then I use triggers to check them. So every time I get to the office and I sit down at this desk, that's my trigger. I just know I got to go check. And it takes literally 15 seconds to go. It's not like every single detail is just high level of the goals. But I think a lot of folks put together, well, first of all, not a lot of people do goals, but those who do, they'll write goals at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, and then they'll just put them away and they'll never see them again. I think the importance of what you mentioned earlier, Tyler, is bringing those goals right in front of your face, so you're aware of them every day and remember them and be really focused. Because it just helps you, I think, visualize, oh, this is what I was supposed to do. That's right. I'm trying to get in. This is the kind of shape I'm trying to get in. This is the kind of father I want to be. This is the kind of business I'm trying to grow, and just have that in front of you. Where'd you get all this stuff, Tyler? I mean, who inspired you to do all this mindset? I mean, you mentioned Napoleon Hill. It sounds like that was one of your first introductions to the mindset. I mean, how did you get into this?
I probably learned it from you, bro. Heard you talking about it. But that's actually, there's probably lots of truth in that. Like, you were part of that circle of people, and you were this dude that, when I'm brand new in the space, like, you certainly don't know who I am, but I definitely knew who you were. And so I probably did hear you talk about it. And I listen, I'm curious. I love to learn. And I have this, like, I believe that it is my responsibility to change the narrative for not just my family. In the beginning, it was just my family, but like, I believe it is my job to change, like, my responsibility to change the financial narrative for my family. And it is, and I have, but that's why it's so much bigger now. It's my job and responsibility to change the narrative for lots of people. And so I listen to people that are way ahead of me, and what they're doing, man, success leaves clues. And I listen, but I don't just listen, I implement. Like, there's so many takeaways already from this call that y'all could take from that Mauricio said, that I've said, that you could go and take and implement. But but that's the thing, sometimes there's too many takeaways. Like, if you just identify that one takeaway, just one of them, and go put it into action, and now you do that consistently, I mean, damn, there's so much thinking, so much traction and consistency. That's the shortcut, is consistency. So I'm listening, bro, all the time. I'm reading all the time, and just from people who are way above where I'm at.
Consistency is such a big one. I think Darren Hardy says something like the lack of consistency is the Achilles heel of human existence, or whatever the quote is. I mean, it's
I love his books.
So important. Yeah. Timothy was saying, Timothy Abbott, that there's surf in Orlando, man. Can't you go surf in Orlando?
I actually just found this little spot that is like this Orlando water park complex or something that does some of that stuff. So yes.
If you guys have questions in the chat, drop them in there. Work-life balance. I know you're a big family man like I am. Like, how do you juggle all this? How do you build this huge $400 million assets under management, all this stuff that you've done, and yet, keep that promise and that vision and that most important thing for you, which I know is family and your kids?
This question is something. So I just did a roundtable for my team members here in Orlando, and my headquarters here in Orlando, but then for all my bunch team members who are remote. And they just did this on Friday, and they asked me this question, and I'll tell you what my knee-jerk reaction was I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea how to do work-life balance. Like, I'm trying to figure that out. And there's times where I feel like I haven't figured out. And there's times where I feel like I am so far in one direction or the other. But the reality is, what I've learned is that balance isn't even a real thing. It's a fallacy. Like, there's not a true 50-50 balance. It's like a bicycle that you're leaning one way or the other way. And the key is to know which way to lean. Like, right now, I've been leaning a lot more into work. We've had lots of disruptions with some of my companies, and I need to lean more into work side. And I'm blessed to have a partner, my wife, her name Brittany. She's amazing. And what Brittany does is Brittany helps me understand quality over quantity. And it's not just quantity, it's quality. So, like, for example, one thing that I've started to implement is each night I'll go on a walk. It's 45 minutes, right? But it's with, sometimes I do it with both, pack some of those, my kids. But I like to just do them one-on-one. But I'll tell you how I go about this, because it's not just going on the walk. There's 3 questions. I learned this from Tony Robbins, but I think about this in as many situations as I possibly can, which is 3 questions. What do I want? Why do I want it? And then how do I get it? And in this scenario, okay, it's like, what do I want? Well, man, I want Pax, Marley, I want them to know that their dad just loves them and adores them. And why do I want them to know that? Is because I believe that, well, it's one of the most powerful things you can give a kid is love, and it's a confidence. There's a certain amount of confidence with love. And so how do I do that? I don't just go on the walk. I ask, if I bring my phone, I definitely am not on my phone. The only time I even pull out my phone is if I'm going to take a picture of us or something, but I'm not on my phone. I am asking questions the whole time. And that 45 minutes, I find more connection in that 45 minutes than days that I will be home with them the entire day, but not have that same definite aim, that definite purpose as I do because if that's what I got, I get home like that's all I got, I'm giving it my all. And I have found that has been so powerful for me and my kids and our relationship, and then Britt as well. So.
Well, I got to ask a little bit about real estate, because otherwise I could talk forever on mindset. But one of the questions I'm asking all of our syndicator, especially in the multifamily space, which obviously that's what you focus on, is maybe from your point of view, where do you see that we are in the marketplace right now? I mean, a lot of things have been going on. Like, I know you're in 6 different states. Obviously, real estate is localized, but where do you think we are in the cycle? Are we sort of at the beginning of this thing? Are we at the middle, of the end? Like, if somebody was coming to you and say, "Hey, is this a good time for me to get into multifamily?" What would you tell them?
Well, yes, I always believe it is. I always believe it's the best time, right? because there's so many advantages, and I really do truly believe that, because there's so many advantages when you go into buying, that you can look at the current economic situation and make decisions in line with that. There's so much power there. But I'll tell you, I was actually at a Tony Robbins event in February, and there's like 28 something billionaires, something along those lines, like the top of the top people you can think of, they were there. And so all these different presentations. And I am going there with this same question of like, what's going on? What's the state? Where are we at? And what I've realized is that every single one of them, well, there's two major takeaways for me. One, literally every single one of them had a different perspective. Literally all of them. They had a different view of what you should do. Every one of them, which was obviously very confusing. But the other thing was, all of them said this in a way, one way or another, where they said the biggest wealth transfer in history, and they made sure to say in history, not in your lifetime, in history, is going to be happening over the next couple of years. As you know, you got baby boomers who are retiring off, they're leaving apartment buildings and businesses, but obviously if we're talking about apartment buildings to their kids, and their kids don't want them. Mm-hmm. And so, man, there's this transfer of wealth that will be happening there that is massive. And so when you ask me, is it a good time to buy? Yes, man. Because when you can get a deal to pencil out right now in this environment with higher rates and higher cap rates, well, then when rates come down, interest rates and cap rates, start to compress again, whenever that time frame is, well, that's how you compound your wealth. It's harder to do that when you're buying at low cap rates and low interest rates, and then they go up, which is what's happened. That's harder, man. That's a longer game at that place, at that point with those assets. But right now, when you're on the buying side, you can do a pencil out right now in this environment, man, there is so much potential with those deals. And so I will tell you personally, my biggest frustration is we have a bunch of assets that have problems, and I have to put so much time and energy into it. This is what I want everyone to hear on this, whether you have some deals or maybe you don't have some deals yet. These operators who have deals, especially a number of them, I promise you, if they have a number of them, they have some problems right now, most of them, which means they're too busy solving problems and they're not paying enough attention on buying the potential, the possibility of the potentials that are out there, because there's a bunch of them out there right now. And my biggest balance is like, how do I make sure that I take care of the problems while also taking advantage of the opportunity? So if you don't have any properties that you have to take care of, you have all opportunity, man. Do not miss that opportunity. That's what I would say.
Do you use GPs when you're partnering with people on syndications, or you just do everything through MF Capital?
We do both. So we have partners, other general partners on deals that we partner with. I do like that because that gives us obviously some diversification of roles and some. I make less on a deal, but I have more time to do the things that, can drive some revenue. But I prefer to do everything, everything but the property management in-house. But we have other GP partners.
Yeah, I know Timothy and some few people were asking. So I'll maybe once, because I know Tyler's got to go in about 5 minutes, but I'll maybe stay along and answer the legal piece of this. But how do you approach when you do have deals with co-GPs? I guess the question that Timothy was asking is like, how do you develop your GPs to make sure that they are, substantially involved in the deal and actually, really are breaking up the roles and responsibilities? Anything you do specifically, or do you just meet with them and delineate everything?
No, you know, like the answer is in the question. Like we meet and we have, first off, you have to identify what are those roles that you need. And then we have one of the first things we do before we move anything forward into the deal. If this is going to be the team that we have, okay, these are the roles, who's going to fit each seat. So like right now, if you can just think about the different seats that are there, that will need to happen. And then you are plugging people into those seats. That's how we do it. And we make sure that it's very clear. Okay, hey, you're going to be covering this role. You're going to be covering this role. You're going to be covering this due diligence expense. We're covering this due diligence expense. We list it all out. And then we have a partnership agreement where we all agree to this. And then we move forward. And
obviously with Tyler, since we're doing all of his stuff, we're always in communication with him. So that's something that we walk through on the beginning of whenever there's a new deal coming up, we want to make sure that those roles and responsibilities are divvied up ahead of time in the partnership agreement. So that's one of the things, if you're not using us, that's cool. Just make sure that whoever your SEC attorney is, make sure they're involved in that process.
Yeah, bro. By the way, you nailed it. I'm so glad you pointed it out because, like, that's where I learned it. That's where I learned it. I remember coming into, well, already doing deals, had not had those clear conversations, and I remember Bethany being like, "Hey, you're being dumb," like, and you guys like spelling it out for us on what these things were and what we need to do, and that whole conversation, like, that's what you did. It goes so much farther. You guys, what I love about you guys and your team, it goes so much deeper than just creating the paperwork. Like, lots of attorneys can create the paperwork, but you actually can. You go so much farther from that on the acquisition side, and then also post how to take care of and what things you need to be sending your team member, or sorry, your investors. Powerful. So I'm glad you pointed that out for sure.
No, I appreciate that. And that's, as you guys probably know, that's one of my biggest pet peeves in general, that, what you're looking for is not just banging out a bunch of dogs. What you're looking for is to make sure that you are compliant, raising the money compliantly. And I think that's one of the issues with a lot of these folks that just want to bang out dogs. I'm like, yes, dogs are important, but ultimately you should be more concerned about making sure that the docs are compliant, that they're complete, and that all these other things like broker dealer, like co-GPing, like this, like that. Anyway, not to get derailed on the legal side. One last question, and then I want you to talk a little bit about your program and how people can get a hold of you. But let's talk about maybe some common mistakes, right? Like, if you're a first-time syndicator, and we have a lot of first-time syndicators who are part of this community, like, what are some of maybe the top one or two mistakes that you generally see, on somebody who's doing this for the first time?
Well, short-term versus long-term thinking, and not thinking that problems are applicable to everyone but you. And that's a real freaking thing. And how do I know that? Because, well, I am an extreme optimist. I'm an unrealistic optimist. And I'm like, well, dude, whatever it is, everything's going to be great. But I'm going to tell you, this is why you have partners. Because I'm not saying that it's a great thing to be optimistic. Like, that's a great thing. That served me very well in my life. But this is what I love about y'all, because, like, I'll tell you, when you have challenges that come up, and we've had them, everything's great. When everything's going great, everything is going great. Everybody's happy. When there is any sort of disruption, that's where people all of a sudden aren't happy. And that's the same in anything, man. That's the same in your properties. That's the same in a business that you run. That's the same in a job that you have. That's the same in a marriage. It's the same. No different, right? So for you guys forecasted those for us, and you prepared our docs. And I'm serious when I say this. I'm not just saying this to your horn. I'm telling you, like, this is what we have gone through right now, currently, this very second. And as we go back to the docs, and we go back to the things that you guys set up, the things that I thought were probably just a waste of time and being ridiculous, have actually been massive for us to make sure that we are safe and protected, and our investors are safe and protected. So those things have been huge for us, for real, huge for us.
Well, I appreciate that.
Another one is just,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, you can say.
No, I was going to say.
Go ahead. Go.
Nope,
no, you go.
Dude,
you go.
Nope, you got it. I got mine here. You go. Go.
No, I was just going to let everybody know that I'm going to stick around here for another probably 10 or 15 minutes to answer any of these like legal stuff that you guys want, as usual. So if you guys have some questions for me, get it ready in the queue. But talk a little bit about your coaching program too, Tyler. I know you've been doing that for many years now, and it's been super successful. So you want to give like a 2-minute on that and how people can get a hold of it?
Yeah. So it's called the Multifamily Mindset. That's our education company. And man, that's been so fun for me to see people, newer syndicators, just come through. And because that's, Rory Baden is one of my favorites, and Ed uses him too. That's actually where I found out about Rory. And he said something like, "You're most uniquely positioned to serve the people you once were." And that's what, and I didn't know that until after I had done this, but started the company. But man, that process has been one of the most challenging things that I've been a part of, but also the most rewarding. It's like parenthood, I feel like, most challenging, most rewarding. But it's been phenomenal. We do a bunch of events all over the country, some free events, some paid events. We have mentorship trainings, those kind of things. But yeah, Multifamily Mindset, themultifamilymindset.com. You can go check it out. But man, just grateful for that. We have an amazing community. I believe like the training is the training. That's great. But we just have an amazing community of people who are on there. Mauricio, Bethany, those guys are definitely, a part of that community, and pour into our network. So it's been
And
great.
I'll put the link in the chat. And then didn't you just start like a second podcast now? I mean, how many podcasts do you have, dude?
So we have our multifamily mindset podcast for our education company. And then I just started a podcast called Own the Outcome. I'm big on ownership. You know, you mentioned being a victim earlier, and I played that victim card for way too long, bro. Way too long. So Own the Outcome podcast. I've had amazing, dude. I need to get you on that podcast. Now that I said that, how about now have you on that podcast?
No, we've been trying. So it's funny because we were, I was in Hawaii earlier this year and we were trying to coordinate, but I'm going to be in Maui. Let's get together. And they're like, well, I'm going to be in Orlando. And then I was going to be in Orlando and I had to cancel last minute. So we're still trying to figure out how I can get there in person to do the podcast, but looking forward to that.
Make it happen.
And then lastly, what's the best way somebody wants to get a hold of you? How does somebody get a hold of you or your team?
Social media. My social media is my most active. So Instagram is my most active social media channel. So Tyler_Deveraux, and I'm like my posts. I have my posts on automated, but my comments and my messages, that's me. I'm big on that kind of stuff. So I spend time in there actually responding and going through them, and I love them, man. That stuff lights me up. So Instagram is my most. Yeah.
And that's how you freaking grow that thing, man. I mean, yeah, you can post stuff, but I think it is when you get into the comments and start interacting, and guess what? Being social, that actually, it shouldn't be your main focus, but it does trigger the algorithm. But more importantly, that's how you actually get into conversations and start your community, as opposed to just blasting stuff out and just, people comment on stuff all the time and people ignore it, which is I've never quite understood that. So anyway, brother, great to see you. Thanks I know you're super busy, man. And a lot going on. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to do something a little bit different for us too, about the mindset, which I absolutely love. So really appreciate, my friend. Let's be in touch soon. I am going to be on the East Coast at some point, so maybe we'll try and coordinate the podcast then. But I'll get in touch with your team, and everybody else, I'll stick around for a few minutes. But Tyler, thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, appreciate y'all. Thanks for taking the time. I see a couple of you multifamily mindset people on here as well. Naeem, I see your camera on. So appreciate y'all as well. And Mauricio, thank you so much, man. So
thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. All right. Did we do this? I did do a Q&A last week. Anyway, if you guys have legal questions, and I'll talk about, I think that was a great question. Was it Timothy? You asked a great question there about co-GPs, because that is still one of the biggest issues that we're seeing. How do you make sure that it's not only about how do you make sure that they do the substantial duties that they're required to do, but what I've been finding out, which has been fascinating over the last, few months actually, is the fallout from some of these deals going south, the fallout not only with the LPs, I mean, hey, they're not communicating with the LPs. Some people are, things aren't going well, they're not communicating, they're kind of going silent, nobody knows what's going on. I've heard some people, finding out that the deal lost in foreclosure by reading it on social media. So that's obviously an issue, but I've also been getting a lot of DMs and emails about co-GPs getting shut out, right? Like, hey, I'm supposed to be doing this work. I can't even get a hold of the lead GP. I can't even get reports. I can't even communicate, quote unquote, to my investors. And that's a challenging thing. So yes, that hurts both of you. And I think I did a post the other day about this, where if that is happening, right, it hurts not only the person, the co-GP that's kind of the secondary GP and can't get the information because they can't communicate to the investors, but it hurts the lead GP because if they're not involved in the deal and not having substantial duties, then if the deal goes south, or it's already probably going south, that's one of the issues, that they may not have any exposure based on the fact that the deal's going south. It wasn't my fault or whatever. There's just market forces and interest rates went up or whatever the reason is. There's an explanation, and maybe the manager, the GP, didn't fall below the standard of care, acted like a reasonable manager. Hey, it was a tough environment. I got rate caps, so it was too long. Like whatever the excuse is, they may not have any exposure on that side, but they would have the exposure on bringing in, unlicensed broker dealers. Essentially, that's the way it would be. Like you would be bringing in an unlicensed broker dealer, because the general rule is they have to have a broker's license unless there's an exemption, and the exemption requires them to be substantially involved. So if they're not substantially involved, you can't rely on that exemption, and suddenly you have an unregistered dealer in your deal, which screws up everybody. And we did do an episode not too long ago on GPs and co-GPs, kind of the pros and cons of that. And that is one of the cons. Everybody talks about the pros of being a co-GP, which is, hey, I get to participate in the deal and I get to do all these amazing things. And what people forget is the cons, which is, well, this is a general partnership. That means I am responsible. I am the hook on the hook for everybody else's misdeeds. Like if somebody's posting on social media in a 506B when they're not supposed to, and that blows the exemption, I as a co-GP, I'm on the hook for that. If the deal goes south, I as a co-GP, I'm on the hook for that. So anyway, that's kind of the lay of the land of co-GP stuff. I think people are aware of it. That's, I think, one of the reasons why fund of funds are becoming more popular these days, which now just means I got to focus on all the issues with fund of funds. Not that I want to focus on all these issues. I'd rather everybody be doing it right. But anyway, if you guys have any specific questions, happy to answer them. If you guys don't know, I see Tim here. Hey, buddy, I know I saw you post something on Instagram today. So every Monday, I also do an Instagram post as I'm trying to grow that. Sort of an ask me anything there. So if you guys have a question in the middle of the week or can't make this event, or it's an interview that goes too long or whatever, you can always hop on my Instagram at Mauricio Rauld. On Mondays, I do a Mondays with Mauricio post. Just type in your question, and then I will almost always answer the question, throughout the day or something, whenever I have some time. So anywho, see if you got any questions, maybe just raise your hand. See if you've got over here. If not, I've got a guest next week, Diana Lynn, but there was a specific topic that it was property management. She made a post the other day on it was amazing. It was like the 50, she's worked as a property manager and also as an asset manager. And it was like the top 15 things she looks at when interviewing for property management. So I thought that was a great topic. So I think we're going to do that one next week. Until then, always appreciate you guys as members of the community. Really, really appreciate you. If you're not part of the Facebook group, go join that. It's Real Estate Syndicator Community. I need to change that name, by the way. I need to change it to just Real Estate Syndicator Live because it just gets super confusing. But there's a Facebook group. If you just go to mauriciorauld.com/FB group, it's a great community. And especially if you have non-legal questions, because I can answer all the legal questions. I just don't know enough or qualified enough to talk about some of the other stuff like asset management, property management, finding investors, what's working, what's not. So anyway, I'll see you guys next week, and looking forward to it. Take care, everyone. If you'd like to join us live on these episodes and have a chance to get your specific question answered, you can simply go to realestatesyndicatorlive.com and register to be live on the show. Hope to see you then.